Thanks to Lucy Biggers for spending some time with us, and we will see you next week on Newsmix.
Hey everybody, we thank you for joining us today. Wednesday afternoon, I'm Brian Webb with Trenton Hooker with Fox 10 Talks PM edition. In our new digs, kind of like we're moving up in the world or something.
Finally, we've upgraded our rightful spot, I think, you know.
This would be like if I had a cool high-rise apartment looking out over downtown Phoenix. This is kind of the vibe I might go for.
Looking down, you mean, on everyone from your high perch.
If I could afford it.
Yeah,
which I can't. So I'll just come and sit in.
Baby steps, maybe next week. We'll finally
maybe
get there.
Next year. I just come in here sometimes and sit and pretend I live here.
Kind of your zen place, if you will, your temple.
Okay, Trenton, what do we got going on today? A lot more on Nancy Guthrie.
So much there, but at the same time, too, you know, we're stretched into week 3 of this case, and more questions than answers. And I really feel, I was talking with Christina yesterday about this, it doesn't feel like we've really moved on that much from that Monday press conference, right, where the sheriff laid out, it's my gut feeling and my belief that Nancy Guthrie was taken from her home. A crime has been committed. What else do we know that we can, you know, really lay down other than the fact of the security footage that we have, the DNA evidence that's being tested, but there's still just so many unknowns, if you will, in this that I think has everybody just perplexed.
And I've been trying so hard not to criticize because I don't know all the moving parts. How could we?
Exactly.
But what's going on behind the scenes? Then it seemed like a few times we were getting somewhere. We had some people detained. We're like, okay, here we go.
Right.
They're targeting their investigation on individuals now. They must be closing in.
Yes.
Those 2 or so went nowhere.
Right.
And then they fell back on finding gloves on the side of the road. Now we're talking to Mexico about looking down there. And just from the layman's point of view, I'm like, that seems like a wide net versus a targeted approach.
Exactly. Well, and you referenced the Mexico part, which was, I think, the newest thing today. Fox News, again, has a source with the FBI that tells them that part of investigators' focus right now is looking at the possibility that Nancy was potentially taken across the border in Mexico from her home in Tucson, which at least was interesting on its face because our Fox 10 investigator Justin Lum sat down with Sheriff Chris Nanos yesterday for a one-on-one, was talking about the case, and that question did come up of, is Mexico involved in this? Could Nancy be across the border? And he said pretty firmly there's no evidence to indicate that whatsoever right now.
And I know it would be a Herculean task to look through all the cameras at the border, but there are clearly cameras there.
Yes.
Now, I guess you could shove her in the back under a blanket, but, you know, I don't know. I just don't know how that...
It was just interesting, at least, that part. And then also the FBI statement after we found the DNA on the glove, right? They came back with testing that the CODIS hit. the FBI's database for genetic material, their DNA database. And again, that tests all sorts of things where if you're convicted of a felony, you have to submit your DNA for that. Also, certain federal employees have their DNA in the system, military members, etc. And there was no hit on this glove sample that was found, near her home, and also the one that I know that was found at her home. The sheriff told us yesterday that's also being tested. So,
and troubling just how far we're into this. I really, really thought week 1 was going to be, oh my God, where did she go? Week 2, I really thought we were going to start getting somewhere, and it just doesn't quite feel that way.
Right, exactly. But I know sharing our frustration, at least with where these things are, we're seeing it online, just people weighing in too. And again, it's this slow drip process. But Ashlie Rodriguez, our Fox 10 reporter, that she's out right now in Tucson with the latest on the case. Ashlie, can you hear us okay?
I can hear you guys.
Well, what's the scene like there today? Are you in front of Nancy's house again?
Yeah, we are. There's one police cruiser, lots of media. We did just get an update that said that they are testing biological DNA. That's it. That's the only update today. But last night we reported that obviously the DNA from the glove did not come back with a match. So now they're going to be using genetic genealogy methods, which is pretty much using databases, public databases, to try to find maybe like a distant relative that's in the system. And that's it. That's all we got. It's day 18.
And we should bring up, earlier this week, they cleared any of the immediate family based on...
That's what Sheriff Nunes,
immediate family, yeah. So they are no longer suspects. I mean, it's insane. I think a lot of people thought that this would be, we'd be closer, but it feels like every day we come out here, we're still at square one.
Well, Ashlie, of course, we are taking live questions as they're happening on Fox 10 Talks. And I've got to ask you, because this one I think stood out pretty clearly. One person on TikTok just asked, do you have Nancy Guthrie investigation fatigue?
Yes. And most of the people I talk to also have just viewer fatigue. I mean, it doesn't impact a lot of people. At first, it was pretty sensational, especially with her daughter being who her daughter is. I think the people who are still interested in this story are interested in the potential connection to Epstein, and Savannah's connection to Epstein, and how this happened a day after all the files were released. But for the most part, people are like, 84-year-old woman, gone 18 days, no idea where she could be. Who would want to abduct an 84-year-old woman? This is a weird case, but there's not much you can do to solve it. There's not much impact it has on your personal life. It's kind of just one of those head scratchers of, what happened. It would be awesome if they had any serious lead. I mean, when we got that surveillance video, I think people grew a lot more hopeful, and we thought it would lead somewhere. But even that seems like it was so long ago. What was that, like last week? And it's pretty much brought us nowhere. And then finding stuff near her home, and then you find out that they found a lot of black gloves near her home. It's like, how many people were wearing black gloves in the Catalina foothills?
Well, even the FBI, right? When they were collecting those gloves, were wearing black gloves.
Yeah. And I think without progress being made, people are bound to lose interest. As a reporter, I wouldn't call myself an investigator, but as a reporter, it's just hard to tell people every single day that we still don't know where she is.
And we're kind of in a weird spot, really, too, I guess, because on the other hand, people may be getting fatigued, but if I'm not mistaken, we're still getting huge interest, at least online, that we can track minute by minute, and people still are hanging on every word that comes out of here. It's just we don't have any really good words to give them. Oh, we're kind of going this direction. We're kind of going this direction. So we're maybe at a crossroads where that turns one way or the other. But
yeah, and I think part of the frustration, and we've talked about this before, where we've had high-profile cases just in this year alone, where we had the Charlie Kirk assassination, the hunt for that shooter, as well as the Brown University shooter that happened there. All of these things, it feels like with the technology that we have and the availability, that they're going to be able to break through essentially where a case hasn't gotten much traction.
Who gets away with a kidnapping in 2026?
Exactly.
I mean, it's crazy. So initially, as we reported from many experts, it seemed, I'm thinking of the private investigator, Logan Clark, who's worked hundreds of kidnappings in his career. You know, these guys were smart enough to get her out of there, but not smart on the back end. But, well, they've had her for how many days now? And so I do wonder the whole weird stuff about the ransom. There's another ransom note, I guess, to TMZ, $6 billion in Bitcoin, $6 million in Bitcoin. If you had an 84-year-old woman held hostage, wouldn't you want that part over with as soon as, what does dragging this on possibly do for you?
Ashlie, what's your thought about that with the TMZ, the ransom note that they claimed today, and just that kind of salaciousness part of the case?
Yeah, I think TMZ is acting like TMZ, and salacious is a great word. Personally, I think that they've lost a lot of credibility because you had such huge interest in this case initially, and then they just kept coming out with this random thing and this random thing. It never leads anywhere. So now people have started to tune it out because it's like, look, dude, you're getting emails. You don't need to notify the world every time you get a random email. There's a lot of crazy people in the world. This is a story that the world is watching. You might get a crazy email. My question to Harvey Levine is, are you like at all trying to verify this information before you go public with it? Because a ransom note asking for money would open up a line of communication, and they would have a place where they could send the money and a place where they would drop off grandma. And they've never done that. So it doesn't seem like these notes are legitimate. I can tell you that covering this case has really made me think about what it takes to be an FBI investigator, or even working for the Pima County Sheriff's Department, because we heard that he's wearing a backpack in this video. So they tracked that backpack down to Walmart. So then they checked the Walmart out here, and there's, nothing that made them feel like that was a lead. So now they're working with Walmart nationwide, and it's like, oh my gosh, I can't imagine. And then he's wearing a gun holster. So then they're going to try to go to gun stores in the area to check with gun stores to see if anybody came in to buy a gun holster. And it's just like, I know that they know what they're doing far beyond anything that I've ever been trained in, but still it feels like they're piecing together the clues with us. Right. And it's funny when you go on social media, the TikTok detectives, they seem to have more substantial theories. The latest theory I've heard, they've picked up one of the neighbors. Like, the neighbors went on camera and was very quick to point at the son-in-law, and now they've looked at those eyebrows and those eyes with the surveillance video, and they've matched it to this neighbor, and you have people online, you know what I mean? So it's all speculation. But we have seen the TikTok warriors do a lot of damage in recent years when they all join together. And you have a lot of people who are really into crime, really into true crime stuff, and they have time. Yeah. And they're doing their own little at-home investigations. But as a reporter who works for Fox 10, I can't go on the air with a bunch of speculation. So all we have is what they're giving us. And I can tell you that within the last couple of minutes, they have given us an update that says that they are testing biological DNA. So we know that there was DNA.
Actually, right now. So great tease for 4 o'clock. We'll definitely look forward to that report.
Thanks, Ashlie. Thanks, Sandra. All right.
Hey, welcome back to Fox 10 Talks. I'm Trenton Hooker, Brian Webb here. And again, we are following all the developments in the Nancy Guthrie disappearance. So much happening, it feels like, in the past 3 weeks. And then at the same time, too, it feels like we're not much farther than we were last week in really getting to the bottom of what happened to Nancy and who took her.
From the outside looking in, it looks like we're treading water. And I just get discouraged when I said earlier, when it seems like we have a targeted approach, detain this guy, Rio Rico, SUVs carted off, and then all of a sudden we're picking up black gloves on the side of the highway and talking to Mexico. I'm like, oh, that doesn't seem as good.
Exactly. Well, and Ashlie Rodriguez, who just mentioned in her point that, you know, it seems like we have a lot of online sleuths that are trying to weigh in with different theories about who could have done this, who could have done that, and especially where someone hasn't been charged with a crime, or let alone being officially under arrest. Just someone that's detained, as in, I got pulled over for a traffic stop and the officer wanted to talk with me.
Well, should we say, Trenton? I mean, a few prominent media people have said some things that it hasn't quite panned out. In fact, one pointed a big possibility of the blame or as a suspect at the son-in-law, and now the family's been cleared.
Tommaso Cione, right. Annie Guthrie's husband. And again, I know that it's kind of a knee-jerk reaction where so many of these cases, it's always the people that are closest to the person that's deceased. That's where the suspicion almost always falls. But it is interesting, though, just so many theories and also anonymous sources, single sources making determinations. I always just go with, where does the evidence lie? That's what we got to have.
Yeah. It was my running joke. I don't watch Dateline so much anymore because I know the husband always did it. But in this case, the family, the closest to Nancy, has been cleared as of now. So
that's what Sheriff Gona said. And again, we got to take it what does the evidence show? Very, very interesting, though. But Megan Spector is going to join us right now. She has been following this case from the beginning that night as it happened. Megan, you're still en route, correct, to Tucson right now, huh?
Yes, we are. Well, we're in Tucson. We actually just pulled over to a parking lot so we can do this call quickly, give you guys an update, make sure service is good, but we're almost there.
Excellent.
Megan, you know Tucson like the back of your hand. I'm just curious. We talked to Ashlie Rodriguez a minute ago about the fatigue of this story. Do you get any sense of whether that's happening for Tucsonians or not?
I think it's still on people's mind. I think that people, as more information comes out or as less information comes out, whatever you want to say about it, I think people just have a lot more questions, and they're hoping that they get answers. But I mean, we're into week 3 and we don't know much, which is, I think, difficult for a lot of people, including the family.
Hey, Megan, I want to ask you too a question. And again, we are live on YouTube, we're live on our website, we're live on TikTok. So again, folks, keep coming in with these questions. We're going to do our best to answer them. But some new things I thought were pretty interesting just about the neighbors that I think we saw yesterday with the activity with, it seemed like forensic investigators were going to Nancy's next door neighbors, removing a security camera that came out. But what was your thought when we got the news last Tuesday, from the FBI director, Kash Patel, saying that the cameras that we were told had no video whatsoever, boom, here's the video, here's the person face to face. What was your gut reaction when you saw that guy in a ski mask?
I mean, any piece of information about this that brings us closer is a good thing, right? And I think throughout this entire thing, we've just had to trust and assume that the FBI, the Sheriff's Department, maybe even the family knows more than what they are revealing. Now, I think we've gotten a little bit more information about how they piece together those videos, but I wouldn't be surprised if this happens again, where suddenly there's a new lead, kind of like this glove too, you know? This glove is found days later. It's like, how did we not see that at first? We know this was a little bit further away. It was 2 miles away, so maybe that's why. But I just think as this does continue, I'm hoping and I'm sure they're going to find more information that they didn't have from the start, or at least that they didn't tell us from the start.
I just thought, you know, as much as we are starting to demand more answers, Can you imagine if you're a member of the Guthrie family, though, and when you stop being nice, like, are you kidding me? We're into day 18 or whatever. Where is my mother? I mean, you think at some point you're going to have to lose it just out of frustration alone.
I don't know how you can't. And then you start to become very early on part of the spectacle of this, as far as the tabloid feel, which, you know, we've talked about this too, that it seems like we've had quite a while, at least in the news cycle, where a case of this prominence has had this much obsession, kind of like what we used to have even 30 years ago, where it would be every little detail that would play out, you know, kind of when you go to the store with the checkout, be Daily Star or, you know, Now or whatever, and it would be this little clue that came out. It seems like it's been quite a while since we've had something like this, so I can only imagine what they're feeling.
And I'm trying to think, Megan, tell me if this strikes a bell with you, but like I'm trying to remember any kind of story of this prominence taking this long to come to a conclusion of who done it. I mean, 3 weeks in? Usually, like you said earlier about assassinations we've dealt with, those are pretty immediate answers, and here we're just dragging it on.
It's not only who done it, it's where is she?
Where is she?
Yeah.
I think this has caught the attention of the entire country and beyond for so many different reasons, but it's just bizarre. I mean, from the start of this, there are things that sound like it's straight out of a movie. I mean, we're talking about a kidnapping, ransom notes, a masked figure with a weapon at someone's door. These are things that just, they don't sound real. And it's not until we see things like this video where we think, oh my gosh, this is happening, this is real. It's more than just, you know, rumors going around social media, or it's more than just a movie. This is happening in real life, and I just think because it is just so bizarre, that's one of the biggest reasons why people just can't stop talking about it.
Megan, too, another question, just as someone that's been out there in the field every day covering this story and trying to grab hold of the, you know, at least a consistent thread on what's the official narrative that's kind of coming out. Has that been difficult for you, at least hearing one thing from one agency and then another, and then you're trying to get the other clues from people that knew Nancy or lived by her? How hard has that been to really grab hold of that and keep it consistent?
It's been extremely difficult, and I think that it's not only that we're digging for information and trying to pull, you know, what we can from the Sheriff's Department and the FBI, but you guys talked about how much this is just filling social media. So, you know, I'm trying to keep up, let's just say on my days off, and I'm seeing the rumors, the theories on social media. Everyone has been trying to play detective in this case, and I don't blame them, because we all want to try and figure out what happened. But you know, we're trying to dig through not just information that is being told to us, but we're reading through, you know, rumors as well. And I think the Sheriff's Department has spoke to that multiple times. Even today, they had to go out of their way to post on X saying that a SWAT situation was not related to this case. That's not something that they do. You know, they're having to clear up rumors constantly, and they're trying to, you know, correct misinformation, and this situation is just one of them.
That's true. That's a good point. Any police incident in Tucson now, it's like, how's it connected to Nancy? I
remember seeing in the first few days, it was, you know, we have an outbreak of bees escaping from an accident. There were questions. Could this be something to do with Nancy?
We have a few more questions. Guys, help me out on these. We talked about Nancy Guthrie fatigue in town, or the media. We talked about that. Another one, why is there no crime scene tape up? I can just say from my time out there that it's been down and up and down and up. And that was one of the criticisms leveled at the sheriff's office. Why was this? Our crews went up and shot that bloody porch a day or two in, and why was that not sealed off better? There were questions about that. So that's the sheriff's office felt, and the feds at some point felt like they could take it down, but then they do keep going back up there, putting the tape back up.
Seems like 6 or 7
could be
times.
Just getting close to double digits, aren't we? Someone asked a YouTube viewer, do we know if that gun in the holster was real? I guess we don't know, because we haven't caught the suspect. Help me out, guys, if there's no reason to believe that it isn't.
No, that is interesting, because we did talk yesterday with the owner of a gun shop in Tucson, who said the FBI came in had a long list. I think it was like 40 different names and pictures on the sheet saying, do you recognize any of these people? And also asking about certain purchases. So there was a renewed push yesterday on the firearm, which very, very interesting, because that's the first we've heard of it, other than the fact what we all see in that surveillance footage. You know, we've talked to experts who are saying this doesn't look like the work of pros. The way that, you know, that guns in the holster in the front by their crotch, where it's at, that just does not look like a pro going in there that way. But at the same time, too, we're at the end of week 3, you know, coming up soon, and it's gone on this long.
Megan, we have 2 minutes left. Your thoughts on the gun thing, and I guess I criticize a little bit about casting a wide net instead of targeted, but that also, I guess, shows that they're following any and every lead they have. They're trying to figure out more about the gun. Any thoughts on any of this, Megan?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the sheriff's department has, you know, repeatedly said that they welcome, and same with the FBI, any and all tips. And they even, and Sheriff Nanos talked about this when he interviewed with, you know, Justin Lum with us, saying that they have a way to prioritize these tips to look into and kind of a level scale. I'm sure that, you know, they're doing their due diligence looking into that gun, but they haven't released any information, at least to the public, about that specifically. But I think that we also, you know, we don't know this, but there is a good chance that they have more of the video than what has been released to the public. So maybe they are following up on leads based on something else that they've seen that's more than this clip that we have, you know, gotten from them.
Well, that's interesting. Okay. Megan, good stuff out there. Appreciate it. We'll see you tonight on Fox 10 News. One more quick question on YouTube. Has anyone taken a lie detector about the search, the family, or anyone? I don't know about lie detectors, but
haven't heard it yet.
But the family, again, has been
Sheriff
clear.
Nanos, like you said yesterday, it goes just beyond a hit on the DNA that they were testing. There were other pieces of evidence that were critical in making that determination on the family. So,
All right, big interview coming up next. A former sheriff of Pima County is going to talk to us about where he thinks some missteps have gone on and hurt the integrity of the sheriff's office down there. We're going to talk to him coming up after
taking your questions too, right here on Fox 10 Talks.
Welcome back to Fox 10 Talks. I'm Brian Webb and Trenton Hooker, and we're joined by a special guest, former Pima County Sheriff Richard Carmona. Also has an impressive resume as U.S. Surgeon General and a SWAT team member before that. He's done it all. Now teaching at U of A, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Mr. Carmona, we appreciate your time today.
Thanks. Happy to be with you guys.
Thank you. Well, sir, you wrote an op-ed in the Arizona Daily Star about we're in week 3 of this investigation and the search for Nancy Guthrie, but you made some key points I thought were important to flesh out about the handling of this investigation and, more importantly, the messaging that's been put out there with where we're at. But can you tell me on day 18, what is your take right now on if we're going to find Nancy Guthrie alive or we're going to find who took her?
First, thanks for the opportunity to be with you. And please, before my remarks, if I just might comment that first and foremost, for all of my colleagues in law enforcement, this is about finding Savannah's mom. Savannah is like one of our children. She comes from the family. She was a reporter here for many years before going to New York. And I just want to make sure that the public understands that this is a mom that's missing and is of the utmost importance, which is why many of my colleagues in law enforcement here had some concerns with the way the sheriff was managing this, and especially his communication, or very poor communication, to the public, making statements that were, well, quite frankly, just awful and incorrect, and taking actions that were incorrect as well. So a number of us decided we needed to say something about it because we did not want it to reflect on our community and the Sheriff's Department, which has been an extraordinary law enforcement agency that I worked with for 3 decades and had a national reputation. But this aberrancy hopefully will go away, and we'll get back to doing what we're supposed to do. But we're all, I speak for most law enforcement in Southern Arizona, that we are very unhappy with the way this sheriff has conducted himself during this very important investigation.
Mr. Carmona, tell me what stood out to you first as a misstep by the current sheriff's office.
Well, I think the organization at the site with the incident, what's called incident command, and making sure that everybody understood exactly what they needed to do, and integrating with the FBI, who are a partner agency. Unfortunately, the sheriff has alienated them before in statements that he's made, including in the past of accusing them to be inept investigators. And at one point, when he was upset with them doing an investigation on other officers, he basically fired the FBI agents on the task force. So he's embarrassed us before in how he interacts with our fellow law enforcement agencies. And again, you know, looking at this picture of Savannah, who we love dearly, I've known her since she was a young girl coming out of college, and was a cub reporter, and used to report on some of my work with the SWAT team and with the trauma center. So our heart goes out. We're working hard. I think at this point, it would only be conjecture. We are all concerned, and as a former detective and an officer, that the longer it goes, especially for an 84-year-old lady who has medical problem on medication, that the likelihood of her returning safely is less and less. Nevertheless, I know my colleagues are 100% committed to overturning every stone possible to find out where she is, and hopefully, with the grace of God, return her to her family.
Mr. Carmona, too, I want to ask, as not only being an investigator in these cases, especially high-profile ones, but then also as a sheriff, can you talk about behind the scenes, especially your colleagues there at Pima County Sheriff's Department? What are they feeling where they're looking at all this armchair speculation, the media circus on trying to determine where she's at? But obviously, they have information that they can't share with the public because they need to build a case.
Absolutely. And so it would be unrealistic to think that every day they're going to share all of their investigative leads into what's going on, for obvious reasons. We don't want to tip off a suspect who may be fleeing if there's somebody in the area. However, in asking what my colleagues feel, all of us have been very embarrassed with the way law enforcement has been represented here. And we all feel this is not the level of law enforcement that we're used to as far as the public representation. The comments he made, for instance, when questioned by reporters about things that he had said and done in the past, he said, well, I'm not used to being held accountable by my words. That was just absolutely outrageous. Most of us want the media to hold us accountable by words and actions. So to say to the contrary was an embarrassment. So we have two things going on here. A community that's joined very strongly to do everything we can to find Savannah's mom. On the other hand, we're dealing with a leader in the Sheriff's Department currently who is below the standards that we have set in his communications, in his leadership ability, in his integrating the resources to solve this case. All of those things are problematic and cause concern for all of us in leadership positions in law enforcement in Southern Arizona.
I want to get your take, too, on the question about the decision by Sheriff Nanos to send that DNA evidence to a separate lab in Florida when the FBI has said that they offered their lab in Quantico. How did that strike you? And more importantly, how does that reflect on the cooperation between the two agencies?
Well, it's how it struck me, as well as many of my colleagues who I've spoken to. In fact, this afternoon, earlier at lunch, having lunch with the former FBI agent in charge down here, it was just incredible. I mean, why wouldn't you partner with one of the best investigative agencies in the world, which has the best forensic lab in the world, and send it to a private lab? And when he was questioned, he said, it's because it was cheaper. The FBI doesn't charge you. When you're doing this investigation with them, they take the cost on for them. And even if it was a cost, for sure you want to work with the FBI and the forensics lab because they're the best in the world. Now, this is nothing against the private lab. I don't even know who they are. But if you have a joint investigation with FBI agents here, I believe about 70 agents pulled from around the country and locally to assist in this investigation, an incident command system, and we're offered the best crime lab in the country, why wouldn't you say yes and thank you? So it was perplexing to all of us who have been in law enforcement down here.
Richard, do you think these missteps, whether it's messaging or actions, have put Nancy Guthrie's life in even further danger than it already is?
I don't think so, and here's why. And all of the officers I've spoken to, the detectives, the FBI agents down here, they are 100% committed. And really what's happening now, the comments that the sheriff is making really are just a distraction that they're deflecting and staying focused on the mission. The mission is to put all resources possible. And I speak for my colleagues in the Pima County Sheriff's Department as well. All those detectives that are working tirelessly, the deputies that are out there doing traffic control, everyone is focused on this mission. We are just disappointed at the level or lack of leadership at the senior position and some of the remarks that are quite embarrassing that have been made. And the other one is, prematurely releasing the crime scene. You cannot release a crime scene and then say, oops, I'll reconstitute it. Once it's violated, the evidence is no longer being able to be submitted because it will be rejected by a judge because it's tainted. You don't know if anybody contaminated the crime scene. And by his own words, he said he made that decision. So something that's absolutely astonishing in a case like this, or any case, to be able to. In fact, in investigations like this, often the criticism we get as detectives was, well, you've got that crime scene open so long, can't you release it? And what you answer is, when I'm done and I'm certain I've identified all potential evidence in this area, I will release it, but not until then, because we need to preserve the integrity of the investigation. And your network and others showed shortly thereafter a pizza delivery man walking across the whole area, Yes. And we were all astonished when we saw that on TV.
Well, and even yesterday, we were seeing landscapers go out to take care of certain things. Yeah. The day before, it was a pool guy going.
Yeah, the thing is, none of those, if it's a working crime scene, nobody comes in. In fact, the way we establish that, there are officers on the perimeter, and anybody that goes in or out of the crime scene, there's a log. What time you went in, what time you went out. You can't take anything out. If there's evidence you're taking out, it has to be what we call bagged and tagged. There's a number for it, and it's recorded. So when you take the crime scene away, you have no control over that environment anymore. And I don't know that it was contaminated, but I'm saying when the risk of contamination is great and confounding an investigation, which is why all of my colleagues had the same conclusion down here that, my gosh, what was the benefit of releasing that crime scene when we still had an investigation going on?
Richard, too, we have about a couple minutes left, but yes. I want to ask you now, obviously, like you said, the push and the feeling have to find Nancy, have to
yes.
find the people that are doing this. Respecting yes. that, can you talk about what's going to happen in the aftermath of this as far as the Tucson community? We've had the media circus there. We've had the spotlight there. We've had all this pressure put on the department. How do you feel like what's going to be left in the aftermath once we move on?
Well, you know, if I were still there and some of my colleagues in leadership, there would be an after-action report, and that's the first thing. And to be asked the question, what did we do correct? What could we do better next time? I have no idea if that will be done this time because the person in command makes that decision. So I think that the focus has to be, where were the missteps? Why did this happen? Who do we hold accountable for these missteps? Because it embarrassed all of us, and not only locally. This as you know, has gone nationally and then globally. I've had reporters calling me from all over the country. And so it's something that we are all embarrassed about that was 100% preventable if we had the appropriate leadership overseeing this investigation and ensuring the integrity of the investigation. So all of those questions have to be answered in an after-action report. But again, I want to emphasize, many of those officers that are there, both federal and local, I know personally. And they are working their butts off to do everything they can. Some of them are in overtime, some of them are coming on days off, and they are some of the best investigators in the world, as far as I'm concerned. But yet, where our weakest challenge is in that leadership at the highest level, and having a sheriff who continues to embarrass us by his words and deeds.
Richard, got about 30 seconds left. What's your best hope of how this might wrap up and we get Nancy back?
Well, I'm you know, it's really kind of a wing and a prayer. I mean, like I said, for Savannah, this is not a theoretical consideration. She's a young gal that grew up here and went to school here, and we know her. So it breaks our hearts to see this. Our best hope would be that somebody's holding her and maybe hoping for a ransom, but is feeding her and giving her a medicine so that when it's over, she can come home. That would be my hope. I don't have any evidence to support that, but that's what we're all hoping, that there is some place out there that she's safe. Because if she hasn't gotten her medicine, if she hasn't been well hydrated, nutrition and all of that, after 3 weeks, what's the likelihood that an 84-year-old lady would be surviving and doing well? So, you know, our prayers are with the family, and I can tell you every